Okay, let's unpack this. If you've ever wondered how musicians get those really dynamic, almost alive sounds from their gear, sounds that feel like they're part of the playing itself,
Yeah.
then you're going to love what we're diving into today. We're talking about the Electro Harmonix Polyphase.
Ah, yes.
It's a piece of gear that, well, it might not have the instant name recognition of some classics, but it absolutely deserves our deep attention.
It absolutely does.
Mm.
And, to really get why it felt so alive, we kind of need to picture the scene the late 1970s modulation effects world it jumped into.
Right.
That was a real golden era for this stuff. And while lots of phasers were already making waves,
Hmm.
the big ones like the MXR Phase 90 or even EHX's own Small Stone,
Huge pedals.
yeah, huge. But the Polyphase, it dared to be really quite different. It wasn't just another phaser flavor. It was almost rethinking what a phaser could even do.
And that's our mission today, really. To dig out the most important bits about its very unique sound, its kind of fascinating, almost cult history, and the impact it had, we're going to explore how this one pedal sort of blurred the lines between different effects, giving musicians this whole new way to express themselves. And that's how it got known as a phaser with soul.
Exactly.
You're basically about to find out how this circuit let players really interact with their tone, moving way beyond just static effects.
It's a great story.
So, okay, let's set that stage. The late 70s, as you said, buzzing with new sounds, guitarists, keyboard players, everyone was hungry for textures. You had those established phasers, the MXR Phase 90 doing that deep, chewy thing,
The classic swoosh, yeah.
and the EHX Small Stone, known for that warm, psychedelic sweep. They were
Yeah.
standards, right? People loved them for those consistent sounds.
Precisely. But the Polyphase, it really stood out because of one core, groundbreaking idea.
Yeah.
It was envelope controlled.
Okay, explain that. Envelope control.
Right, this is key. See, most phasers then used an LFO, a low-frequency oscillator, which basically means it sweeps automatically back and forth like a knob turning itself. Rhythmic, yes, but predictable.
Got it. Like a wave.
Exactly. But the Polyphase, it added an envelope detector. This meant the phasing effect, the sweep. It wasn't just doing its own thing. It could react dynamically to how loud you played, your input signal's intensity.
Ah, okay.
And what's really fascinating here is how this envelope control basically brought that kind of auto-wah expressiveness right into the phaser circuit. At its core, it was using these analog bucket brigade devices, BBDs.
The classic chips.
Yep, those
Oh,
BBD
sure.
chips. They created those multiple filter stages, giving it that really rich, swirling depth, not just a subtle effect.
So that dynamic reaction, that's really where the soul starts coming in, isn't it?
That's it.
Instead of just that constant back and forth, you hit a string harder and the effect swells up or dives down.
Exactly. It responded to you, created a much funkier, almost synth-like character. It wasn't just layering an effect on top. It was like it was listening to your phrasing. And that's where it really carved its own path. It put the Polyphase in this unique auto-phaser category. More like an envelope filter in some ways than your standard four-stage phaser.
Right, because a typical Phase 90, that's a four-stage, right? Known for that deep sweep.
Correct. Beloved for it. But the Polyphase, with its multi-stage design plus the envelope control, that just pushed it somewhere else entirely.
So for musicians, this meant the effect felt, well, more alive, more responsive.
Absolutely, like a direct extension of their playing. It let them weave the effect into their performance, not just switch it on. Much more personal.
You could really shape the sound with your hands.
Totally. Turning every little strum or pick attack into part of this dynamic soundscape, it fundamentally changed how you could think about using an effect like this. Genuinely revolutionary for the time, offering a much more complex, interactive sound palette.
Okay, so that's the big idea, the revolution. But how did this phaser with soul actually make those sounds? You mentioned the analog multi-stage circuit at its heart.
Indeed, that was the foundation sophisticated analog circuitry for those rich, swirling textures.
But it was the controls that let you shape it all, right?
Exactly. It was the combination of that analog core and its unique controls that gave it so much versatility. Again, that envelope control was front and center. The sweep wasn't just the internal LFO. It could be triggered directly by your dynamics.
Your pick attack.
Your pick attack,
Yeah.
exactly. And the main controls, well, they sometimes varied a bit between versions, but typically you had rate. In LFO mode, that's just the speed of the sweep from super slow to really fast.
Standard phaser stuff.
Pretty standard. Then depth, controlling how intense the sweep was. Subtle shimmer to, deep underwater sounds.
Okay.
Feedback was crucial. That dials in resonance, makes the notches sharper, more vocal, more intense sounding.
Ah, like making it peakier.
Yeah, PQ is a good way to put it. Then the sensitivity, that determined how strongly the envelope reacted to your playing, lets you really fine-tune the touch response.
So you could set it to react just to hard hits or even softer notes.
Precisely. And finally, mode switches let you choose. Classic LFO pulse or the interactive envelope-driven sweep. And this really begs the question, how did giving players these controls change how they actually created sounds compared to just having a rate knob?
Well, the tonal results were just as distinct, weren't they? It wasn't just another phaser. In LFO mode, yeah, you could get those classic, smooth, psychedelic washes, kind of like a small stone, but maybe with more fine-tuning available.
Right, more control over speed and depth, definitely.
But then you flip that switch to envelope mode, and whoa! The pedal just transforms. Suddenly you're pulling out these funky, quacky, almost vocal wah sounds that follow every little thing your pick does.
Yeah, it gets really expressive.
Turns your guitar into this rhythmic, talking kind of thing. It absolutely blurred that line between phaser and auto wah. You could dial in subtle movement or go totally extreme, like synth vowel sounds, incredible range, stuff other pedals just couldn't do.
No, they really couldn't.
And this dynamic thing, it brings us right back to that phaser with soul idea. The tech was clever, sure, but what made it legendary was how musicians used that responsiveness, right?
Exactly. It wasn't just a static effect. It felt like part of the instrument.
Yeah.
Became one of the most alive modulation pedals because it genuinely responded to that human touch.
So who are the players who really connected with that?
Well, that responsiveness is why it clicked with such different artists. Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead.
Ah, Garcia.
He famously used the polyphase in his later rigs. That really cemented it as a kind of jam band essential.
Right, and if Garcia used it.
Exactly. If we connect that to the bigger picture, his use definitely boosted its status among deadheads.
Yeah.
You had fans hunting for that pedal to chase that fluid Garcia tone. It became one of those EHX pedals for them.
Essential gear for deadheads.
Totally. But beyond the jam scene, you had funk and fusion players grabbing it for that envelope-driven quack. It could really cut through a clean tone with attitude.
Gave it some bite.
Yeah, and rhythmic punch. And it wasn't only guitarists. Synth players used it too, for dynamic filtering on analog synths. Added movement that wasn't just a predictable LFO sweep, gave synth lines a more organic human feel.
That's interesting, using it on synths. So it really built this unique cultural footprint then. Maybe not as famous globally as the Small Stone.
Nowhere near as ubiquitous, no.
But it developed this dedicated, almost cult following among players who specifically wanted that funky envelope filter thing without losing the phaser richness.
Precisely. It was an underground favorite for people looking for something different.
And I mean, just think about how powerful that is when an effect doesn't just change your sound, but feels like an extension of your playing, like it understands your musical intention.
That's the magic of it. That personal connection is why it resonated so deeply.
So its impact grew through the artists, but the pedal itself had its own journey too, didn't it? Let's trace that evolution.
Yeah, it had a bit of a life cycle.
The original Polyphase, when did that first appear? Late 70s into the early 80s.
That's right, late 70s, early 80s. Those first ones were in those classic big EHX boxes.
The tank pedals.
The tanks, yeah. Pretty sturdy, but pretty rare these days, especially in good shape.
I bet. Finding one now must be tough.
It is. But luckily, Electro Harmonix new people still loved it, so they did reissues in the 2000s and 2010s.
Ah, okay. What were they like?
Much more practical, actually. They put it in a smaller box, much more pedal board friendly. And crucially, they added modern features like true bypass wiring and standard power inputs.
Made it easier to use with modern gear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was really important because it meant that unique analog envelope phaser hybrid lived on. A whole new generation could get that touch-sensitive magic without having to track down a fragile, expensive vintage one.
So what's the situation now? Are they still making the reissues?
Sadly, no. Even the reissues have been discontinued in recent years.
Really?
Yeah, which, predictably, has just made both the originals and the reissues even more sought after on the used market.
Especially by those funk players and synth heads who know what it does.
Right. They know that specific dynamic response is hard to find elsewhere. It's become a bit of a classic pawn shop legend story.
How so?
Well, like a lot of those 70s EHX pedals, you probably could have found a Polyphase for pretty cheap back in the day, maybe gathering dust in a secondhand shop.
You might have just walked right past it.
Totally. Thinking it was just some old clunky thing. Now, originals can go for, what, $400, maybe $700, or even more, depending on condition.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is seeing how a cult classic, something once overlooked, gains so much value. It's not just nostalgia. It's because digital modeling still kind of struggles to perfectly capture that organic, slightly unpredictable analog feel.
That specific character.
That specific character. And, there aren't that many true analog envelope phasers quite like it. With funk and jam music seeing a resurgence, the demand just keeps going up.
It really does all connect back to that core appeal, doesn't it? That expressive, touch-sensitive thing, making the effect feel like part of the music itself.
That's what musicians are still looking for.
It just proves that those truly innovative designs, the ones that respond to the player, they really do stand the test of time. They're more than just circuits.
Absolutely.
So, wrapping this up, what does it all mean? Our deep dive really shows the Polyphase was, well, genuinely one of the most expressive phasers ever made.
Without a doubt.
By cleverly mixing that classic BBD phasing with that dynamic envelope follower, it didn't just make new sounds, it blurred the lines between effects. Phaser, auto-wah.
Yeah.
It offered a whole new way to interact.
And it absolutely carved out this unique, vital space in funk, jam, experimental music, all that stuff. Maybe it was overshadowed by the small stone in terms of sheer numbers.
Yeah, definitely less common.
But its dynamic character, that ability to respond directly to the player, that earned it this loyal, almost revered cult following that's still going strong today. Its impact was about depth, not just width.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you think about the Polyphase's journey, maybe consider how many other sort of underground favorites might be out there waiting to be rediscovered. And what hidden potential lies in effects that really connect with that human element in music making. Maybe the most soulful sounds really do come when the gear lets the musician truly speak.